I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but I was making pizza literally before I came and made this video, and I'm a filthy chef. I just get flour everywhere. Maybe it's the fact I should not be wearing a black hoodie while I'm making pizza. Well, you guys have saw this video, by the way. You know what this video is about. You clicked on the title, you saw the thumbnail. We're talking about GP events and what to expect when you're going to one. What do you actually need when you're going to a GP event? Well, the first major thing you need is a DCI number. If you don't have a DCI number, you can get a DCI number at the event. Second thing you need is you're gonna need a deck. Turns out if you're playing Modern, you're gonna wanna bring a deck with you. If you're playing Standard, you're gonna wanna bring a deck with you. If you're playing Legacy or Vintage, probably gonna need to bring a deck with you. Definitely gonna need to bring a deck. If you are playing a sealed GP though, probably bring some sleeves, and then you're gonna be playing sealed. Those are the things you're really gonna need, but what else do you actually need? Well, for starters, a backpack is almost a must-have. And the best place to keep it when you're actually playing games is under the table between your legs, because then no one's gonna steal it from you, and you don't have to worry about, not paying attention to it when you're actually focusing on playing the game of Magic. Now, the big thing is, a backpack is not super special or important in this case, but what is inside the backpack is gonna be quite a bit more interesting. To start out with, there's some obvious things you're gonna want. If you're playing in a sealed event, you're gonna wanna buy new sleeves and just use new sleeves. Highly recommend Dragon Shield if you wanna buy these. There's a link in the description below the video where you can do that. You can also use Ultra Pro. I find Ultra Pro rip a lot, so I kinda use them for I don't use them. You're also gonna want a deck box, highly recommend it, because it keeps everything organized. You have everything in here. Obviously your deck, sideboard, a divider for your sideboard. You're also gonna wanna bring dice. Highly recommend bringing D20s and D6s. You're gonna want them in a variety of situations, keeping track of life totals. Actually, no, you're not gonna wanna keep track of life totals, because you also need a pen and a pad of paper. Because when you're playing at a more competitive level, and you're playing at a GP event really specifically, you want to write down as the life totals change, rather than just spinning a little die down. If you're playing casual Magic, spinning a die is perfectly fine, but this allows you to keep track of every single instance that happens, so you can kind of go back and say, oh yeah, you forgot to pay your life when you sacked your land to go and fetch another land. The other thing that is super important, bring all of the tokens that your deck possibly could generate. So I have Kalidas in the sideboard, so I have the zombie tokens for that. And then I have Lingering Souls in the main deck, so I have spirit tokens. So you're gonna want that as well. Not necessarily these exact tokens, but you're gonna want the tokens that your deck can produce. The other things you're gonna want for game-wise is you're gonna want a playmat, because when you're playing, there is quite limited space. Usually you are sitting extremely close to your people that you're playing next to side. So having a playmat, on top of it being easier to pick your cards up and move your cards around on top of these things, which is really the reason why people started using them, the other reason why it's really important is it actually acts like a buffer zone. Your opponent is never going to intentionally put their stuff on your playmat. And if they do, you can say, excuse me, this is obviously my play space because I have my playmat here and I really have enough space for it. Please move your stuff. So a playmat kind of allows you to have a border within which you are going to be playing your game, which is surprisingly important when there is 1,000 people playing and everyone's kind of elbow to elbow. And then the last thing is food and water. I don't actually have any food in my bag because this is clearly not the GP event yet. It's in a week from now, so I'm not gonna fill it up with stuff. Water. Do not bring caffeinated beverages. So one of the things I've seen, I'm gonna rant a little bit here. When you're playing a GP event, you need to realize that you are playing Magic for 10 hours straight. That is a lot of Magic. That is an insane amount of Magic. You need to make sure that you're not going to crash yourself. So having a coffee when you first get up in the morning, sure. But don't drink coffee at 3 in the afternoon where you're like, my brain is starting to get pretty fried, I need to pick me up. Have an apple, have an orange, have a banana. Don't go get a coffee, because what'll end up happening is you'll actually give yourself brain fatigue. You'll get 20 minutes of energy of yeah man, this coffee really spiked me up, I'm playing good Magic, and then you're just gonna crash. You don't ever want that. That's the worst thing you could possibly do when you're trying to play a competitive event. And then again, as I was saying, eat good snacks. Bring vector bars, bring power bars, bring fruit. I bring a little bag of nuts usually with me because I want to have something that I can eat, because there's sometimes you don't necessarily get time between rounds. If your round finishes now, you might have 15-20 minutes before the next round. So you need to be prepared that you're gonna eat something, right now, in between rounds, kind of get the blood flowing a little bit. Speaking of getting the blood flowing, you should always get up and walk around. As soon as your round ends, talk with your opponent and say, hey, thanks for playing, yada, yada, yada. Get up, wander around a bit. because you want to get your blood flowing. You want to get your energy levels back up in between rounds, and sitting down at the table will just kind of make you lethargic and slow and bleh. Getting some blood flow is going to really help your game in the long run. Playing Magic, as I said, for 10 hours straight, it's a physical game. It's like you have to physically be ready for it, not just mentally, but like physically, body-wise. So keep that in mind, especially if you gate to day 2, then you're gonna be playing more Magic immediately after. So do yourself a favor, do all those things. Okay, at this point, we have all of our gear. We've went through, made sure our deck is pretty much ready to go. We've changed our sleeves if we need to. Now, here becomes the big one. This is the big killer for a lot of people, and that is, you're playing competitive Magic now, which means you need to know the rules of Magic. There is no takebacks anymore. When you are playing the game at this point, you are playing for keeps. If your opponent reveals their hand, because you say Inquisition them, you should write down those cards. Write down them on your little piece of paper you have, because your opponent doesn't have to play with their hand open on the table anymore. They're gonna put it back, and it's up to you to remember those cards, so you gotta know it. On top of that, because this is the real game at this point, you should probably know your deck. You should, one, know what all cards you have in your deck. So when an opponent plays a card, you should say, these are the cards I have to deal with it. You should have an idea about what you need to draw into if you are if you're going to beat whatever the opponent has just played. That's something else. You should also know all of your matchups as best you can. Obviously, you can't do this for everything, and there's a bunch of ways of helping this. I mean, we play with what's called a challenger deck, which is a deck that has 11 different decks written on it, just a line with the name of a card on it and the mana cost of that card, and we just kind of need to memorize what all those cards do so we can play against all of these decks. So you should know, how does your deck fare against all of the top meta decks? Does it fare against blue-white control well? Does it fare against humans well? Does it fare against spirits well? Or like, how about, is it Phoenix? What do you do when you're playing against those decks? What kind of things do you need to sideboard in? Those are the things you should know about your deck if you're going into this. So you should prepare, hopefully get to know your deck a little bit in that case. Additionally, because this is competitive Magic, don't ever be scared to call the judge. I probably call the judge at least minimum once per GP when I'm playing, because there's a rule that seems a little bit weird, or my opponent does something that's a little bit weird, or maybe I don't quite know a card. Better to call a judge and have them resolve it for you than something happening down the road saying, oh, my opponent didn't do this. And then playing in the main event for a GP is slow down and breathe. Take your time. You don't have to rush. Obviously, if you're playing a control deck, you can't slow play, but you don't have to rush when you're playing. Take time, think about the moves you're doing, think about the cards you want to play. Don't just play instinctively. What are you doing? What is your opponent doing? What is the best line of play? Otherwise, you're just going to make mistakes. And as you all know from me commentating while I play games of Magic, I make a lot of mistakes because I'm just trying to play fast and be entertaining for you guys. If you're playing competitive, slow down. The last piece of advice I want to talk to you guys about is, if you do scrub out, like I did last year. So I went 0-3 with the main event, which means I dropped. It's not the end of the world. There's lots of side events, lots of very cool side events, some of which are actually more enjoyable than the main event, because the main event, it can be stressful, like really stressful playing the main event. We're playing some more casual stuff, is a lot more fun sometimes, so don't be scared to go and play side events. Those are my advice. This has been GiantMonsterGames. This is a little bit of a different format. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time though, my name's Adrian. Thanks for watching. This is GiantMonsterGames. And don't forget to game like a giant monster.